Are all narcissists sex addicts? You might have seen this a lot either in your relationship or heard about it from a lot of people that it seems like narcissism and sex is always together. What is the correlation between narcissistic abuse, narcissists, and sex addiction? What does it actually look like? How does it match up? Maybe you've seen and you've felt this confusing mix of an emotional high and low when you talk about your intimate relationship with a covert narcissist. A topic that doesn't get addressed that often is sex with a narcissist. Here's a narcissist that doesn't, or I don't cheat, and all this kind of stuff, and it's a bunch of BS. When it comes down to it, a narcissist will cheat you of your time, of your money, of your energy, of your sex, of anything like that. Because it's not about you, it's all about them. Narcissists oftentimes struggle with addictions, whether that's emotional affairs, whether it's different sexual encounters, whatever it might be. A lot of times we see a propensity of narcissists that struggle with having different addictions. If you guys are new here, my name is Ben Taylor. I'm a self-aware narcissist on this channel to provide awareness, growth, healing, change, and development. I'm the founder of Raw Motivations and your guide in the 45-Day Clarity Challenge that you can access at claritychallenge.net. If you like what you see here talking about narcissism, narcissistic abuse, my journey in narcissism, please hit subscribe. Hit that notification so you can get notified when we go live more often, when we interact with other people, when we drop new videos. We'd love to have you part of the community. Well, today we're talking about this aspect about addictions, and especially in terms of emotional affairs, especially in terms of sexually explicit content, different things on the internet, whatever it might be, and how narcissists oftentimes have those things in their life very actively. We see this time and time again as being a part of an aspect of a relationship falling apart. Now, it's not the only reason, and we're not blaming that, and we're not justifying it, but we're just saying, like, hey, when someone's a narcissist, it's very common for these things to come alongside and be a part of what's happening in that relationship. So I want to talk to you about some of the sexual addictions with narcissists and what to do if your partner has that. Well, when we talk about narcissists, we need to first set the groundwork of narcissists that just love control. I mean, that's what it is, what it boils down to. Typically, it's control of the mask and control of the image of what you see, but there's this aspect of wanting this power over another person. This control that actually controls their perception of you and their perception of the world around you. The idea that this aspect of wanting power and entitlement over the narcissist wants over you is this idea that, hey, I'm the best in the world. Like, I have this upgraded like sense of grandiosity. Like, this is who I am. I'm better than you. And I'm also entitled to what I want. Typically, you'll have this need of validation, this attention, this looking for this aspect of supply. Now, when we talk about supply, sometimes people get really offended about that. I'm not saying that people are supplied, like these are degraded people, these are awful people. No, what I'm saying is the narcissist oftentimes looks at other people as being supplied, as transactional, as a way to be able to get something from that other person. And typically, because of needing validation, attention, and that supply, they'll turn to different addictions. What can I do that makes me feel happy in this moment? What can I do that gives me a high in that moment that makes me feel the way that I want to feel? This is where a narcissist often turns to other women, often turns to online, to sedate, to hide, and to try to feel better about themselves by getting a quick fix or a hit off of whatever they're looking at on the internet. Now, one side note, really quick, that I wanted to point out is one time my therapist actually said this concept of that pornography and things like that is the like acceptable sin, the acceptable thing inside of Christianity. Now, when I first read that, I was like, this is kind of weird. Like, what's that actually mean? And she went on to explain that, like, well, you know, if someone's drinking or if someone's on drugs or if someone has like these different addictions, like they look bad, like you can see them. But in Christianity, it's like, oh, no, you can kind of hide it pretty well. And that's why there's a lot of people that hide it, that mask, that are narcissists, that whoever, that mask those different things because it appears more acceptable because you can't see it. Which is why a lot of times you find that it falls into this aspect of narcissism because it's a lot easier to be able to hide under the surface of like, I'm not looking at that online. I'm not engaging with that. Like, what are you talking about? And so a lot of times we'll see this aspect of trying to hide it to have control over what they're hiding, almost like a cheating affair in one sense, that high of that, and to be able to get what they want. All right, so when we're talking about narcissists, or we're talking about this idea of looking at stuff on the internet, okay, oftentimes men seek it out, okay? It happens with women too, but I'm mainly talking to a lot of women that say, hey, this is what I see in my relationship. A lot of times men seek it out. Now, this is the part where people are like, well, not all men, okay? It's true. Not all men seek out sexual explicit stuff on the internet, okay? But a lot of people do. And a lot of people do, and it's a multi-billion-dollar company and business and industry out there that makes money off of people that just want to look at stuff online versus having like a real and an in-depth relationship. It fits perfect for what the narcissist is looking for a lot of times because they're looking for something shallow that they can get something out of. Now that something out of is just a high, and that shallowness is no more than looking at an image or a video or texting back and forth with someone on the internet about sexually explicit things. But typically, that's what they're looking for, is this high. This piece of like, let me be connected to another person, but not be responsible for how I actually show up. That's the easy thing about the internet. So, when we dive into this, the narcissists are looking for a high. Okay, they're looking for the pleasure, they're looking for the thrill, and then there's the crash afterwards. Whether that's dealing with actually the shame and the guilt and trying to figure out like what to do. But the reason why a lot of times there's this aspect of like seeking stuff out online because it fits the false reality. It fits the false reality of the narcissist of like, hey, I'm this way, but I'm also this way. And typically the narcissist will not show the backside of that. Now they will in the relationship a lot of times. And a lot of times the relationship will get to the place where they show it and they don't care. Where it'll be actively in the relationship and the person's like, what are you doing? They're like, this is just me. I'm just taking care of me. I'm just taking care of my needs. That's typically the lie that they're telling themselves and telling other people to try to justify what they're doing. But what's really happening is they're demonstrating their lack of care for another person. They're demonstrating their lack of value to you and to the people that they're watching online. And typically, they're looking for this aspect of like, let me get to the place where I can get this high, get this hit, and not have to get connected to anyone emotionally. And then you wonder, this is how it actually plays out in the relationship. You're like, I don't want anything, and then you get coerced into doing something because that's all they view you as, a transaction, something to be able to get something out of. And part of that is because they've already been ingrained with that thought process because of everything they're looking online. Because what they're looking online is just transactional. Click this button, I get this high. I click this button, I get this hit. I see this, I feel this way. So why can't I do that with the people in my life? Well, because those actually take real relationships. Those actually take real emotion, and most men aren't willing to do that. A lot of men are not willing to actually step up and say, hey, I'm actually going to invest my time, money, and energy into another person, not to be able to get something out of them, but because I actually care, love, and respect about them. That's the difference. But a lot of our society is not seeing that, and they're going a different way. A lot of men don't see that. And as a result, what they do is they show up and they say, oh, I provide. I put a roof over your head. I came home at the end of the day. And they think that's good enough. Maybe you've been in a relationship where your partner has said those things or has been that way to you. And then you're left thinking like, well, they do provide. So like maybe that should be good enough. It's not. And you're settling for something that you shouldn't have to by thinking that. A lot of times narcissists seek out affairs. A lot of times it's the next step. Like I've been looking at stuff online. I've been taking care of myself, my own needs and all that kind of stuff. So like I might as well just go out and just do it. You know, just find someone, just get an affair. I don't know if I say all narcissists cheat. It's really interesting because sometimes when I say that, you get narcissists that come out of the woodwork and be like, well, here's a narcissist that doesn't, or I don't cheat and all this kind of stuff. And it's a bunch of BS. When it comes down to it, a narcissist will cheat you of your time, of your money, of your energy, of your sex, of anything like that. Because it's not about you. It's all about them. It's all about what they can get from you. And as a result, they'll put all their time and attention into anything except you. Why do they seek out affairs? We've got 4 different things. Number 1 is the chase. Capturing another person. It is an exciting process for a narcissist to go to the place of like, I want to be able to get this person. I want to get with them. I want to woo them. I want to figure this out. Like, boom, I've got this person. There's not this intentionality of like, oh, I love them. I care about them. It's like, no, this is a high. This is a fun. Like we are chasing this person strategically and maliciously to be able to capture them and to be able to get them under their control. Second one is the high. This aspect of like the love bomb, the excitement, like this is like the best ever. This is the narcissist building the pedestal for the person to sit on top to be like, oh my gosh, they're the best person ever, before they knock it out. The third one is the thrill, getting away with it. There's an aspect that breeds a huge level of addiction and a high and a dopamine hit when they're able to pull something off. You see this all the times in movies that you watch. They got away with the bank robbery. They got away from this. They accomplished this. They had this success. All those different hits, that's what a narcissist is pulling off of. Is like that high. Like, I just did this. And number 4 is the escape. The pretending that life fits inside this false reality. And this construct that they've actually done of like, oh, I can escape my awful life. They're telling themselves a story. I can escape my awful life and get with this person and be with this person, and it'll be the best thing ever. And they're searching for that ideal love. The reason why I put those down, the chase, the high, the thrill, the escape, is all those are different aspects of things that I did. Of how I showed up in those relationships, of chasing after other people to get that high, to get that thrill of this is what I'm doing, and the escape of like, this is the reality I want. Even though the reality I was building was completely false and wasn't real. Do you have a person in your life, narcissist, toxic, whoever, that's dealing with different types of sexual addictions, dealing with different types of affairs? You need to understand, until the truth is there, until they're willing to do what is required and actually say, this is what's happening and let me work on it, then you have no chance on dealing with the narcissism. If they can't solve the addiction piece, you're not going to be able to solve the narcissism piece. So for those of you that are like, maybe I can stay, maybe I can work on it, maybe I can help them, maybe get self-aware, know who they are, and change. If they're not willing to give up their addictions, they're never willing to be able to get through the aspect of the narcissism, because it takes a lot of work. If you're dealing with a narcissist today and you're confused about like what they're telling you of, oh, this is what I deserve or this is what I need, and you're like, but what about my feelings? You might be dealing with a really toxic person that doesn't care about you, that just treats you as a transaction, as a toy on the shelf that they can use and abuse whenever they want. I want to encourage you to reach out for help. Whether that's with me, whether it's with another coach, with a therapist, whoever it might be, you can go to rawmotivations.com, click on the one-on-ones. Would love to be able to help work with you and help you get clarity about the confusion and the crazy making that person is putting you through.
Are all narcissists sex addicts? You might have seen this a lot either in your relationship or heard about it from a lot of people, that it seems like narcissism and sex is always together. What's the deal with that? Why is there so many narcissists that think about, act on sex all the time? Is it just that they're addicted to sex, or what's actually going on there? If you guys don't know who I am, my name is Ben Taylor. I run Raw Motivations, and I'm on this platform as a self-aware narcissist. I know that's not a popular thing. You don't see many people out there that claim to be a self-aware narcissist. Well, I've been through my life and I've learned a lot of different things about myself that's brought me to that conclusion and brought me to that place where I'm actively in therapy on a weekly basis to try to work on myself and try to work on fixing and healing and working through all the shit that I've caused. As a result, I can see myself being in therapy long term, because the narcissism personality disorder is something that's a mindset and a thought process that happens on a day-to-day basis. It's almost like you can't shut it off. But I'm on this platform to bring awareness about narcissism, how it's destroyed lives, how it's hurt people, and also to be able to share my story of how I'm working on changing, modifying behaviors, changing the actions that I do so that I don't hurt people, so that I don't go down those roads that destroy people and relationships. So being on this platform, I'm here to provide awareness, growth, healing, and change to other people. Notice I didn't say hope. I don't come on here to bring hope to people saying, hey, love your narcissist and they'll get better, because that didn't work for me. I'm not on here to say, hey, tell your person that they're a narcissist and convince them or get them into therapy, because that didn't work for me. Those weren't like the changing or defining moments for me. If you're with a person that's showing narcissistic personality disorder or narcissistic traits, or they're just a toxic person, and you're noticing that they're not honoring, respecting, or loving you by how they're demonstrating that, by their actions, you probably need to evaluate your situation, and you most likely need to leave, because you need to focus on your worth, on your growth, on your self-worth, self-confidence more than someone else destroying and taking that away from you. And that's what a narcissist does. I work with people every day in one-on-one coaching or in group sessions or live events to try to be able to help people break free from that narcissistic hold. Almost like the addiction that narcissist has on another person. Oftentimes it happens by them grooming their victims. And it helps by working through the trauma bond, working through the facts and the truth of the situation to ultimately set you free from what you're thinking, what you're believing, or what's been put on you either from upbringing, your own thoughts, or the narcissist. And as you get through this stage of getting out of the trauma bond or getting out of that relationship, you get to a place where you feel more at peace. But that peace doesn't always feel peaceful. It's kind of weird, but it's that moment where you're detoxing from the narcissist and you still think about them. You still want to be with them. There's still this pull back to them that you're like, I thought it was going to be easier once I left, but after I left, it feels even harder, or the abuse feels worse. Oftentimes this section can be very dicey because people are experiencing often withdrawals from being in a narcissistic relationship, especially if they have a pattern or they've been with multiple people with that type of tendency. So getting people through that is very crucial to get to the place where they can actually have clarity in their life, clarity and vision in where they're going. So I try to work with people then to set up what's your goals, what's your vision, where are we going forward, how do you want that to look, how do you want that to be experienced, how do you want that to feel, and what are the boundaries we need to set in place so we don't go back to the toxic relationship and that we don't get involved in another one. And how do we set those up on a healthy day-to-day basis? That's how I work with people, to try to help people not experience the abuse, not experience the shame, not experience everything that I've gone through and that I've put on other people. That's why I'm on here. If you haven't had a chance, download the NARC app, NARC, Narcissistic Abuse Recovery Community. We've got that on Google Play and also on the Apple Store. It's a group, a community of like-minded people that are survivors and are learning to thrive in their current life, in their situation where they're growing and changing, learning about narcissism, getting free, tracking their no contact, recording their truth, and interacting with the community there. There's private lives that happen on there, and also one-on-one discounts, and then even I'll lose my train of thought. There's even the monthly Zoom calls that we have that are like coaching and like webinar and question and answer based as well. So anyways, check that out. So narcissists and sex, like what's up with that? What is going on? You see a lot of times people will be like, narcissists are just sex addicts. Like it seems like all they're focused on is getting that supply, and one of those supplies is sex. Well, you might notice with narcissism, they're normally coupled with addicts behavior. You'll find that addict behavior with sex, with drinking, with gaming, with drugs, with whatever. You'll find different aspects of it that infiltrate into the life of your regular life, and you're like, wait a second, what's actually going on? It might be something that you got involved with a narcissist and then down the road you found out, whoa, they have this behavior. There's been people that have been with a narcissist for months or years and not known that they have a drug problem, or not known that they have a drinking problem, or whatever it might be. Sometimes they will hide these things so well to try to be able to avoid any accountability, any guilt, and any shame of what's happening. So what's actually happening with those addictions? Well, narcissism and sex addicts they're not innately paired together. But a narcissist will often have addictions and behaviors of addictions. Why? A lot of times because addictions are used, especially in a narcissistic viewpoint, as a form of sedation. See, as a narcissist, I don't want to feel guilt. I don't want to feel shame. I want to feel pleasure. I want to feel happiness, and I don't know how to attain that. So I'm always going to be using other people as supply to try to get what I want. So in the aspect of addictions, sex addiction is a great aspect for a narcissist to try to get that supply. The problem is it's short-lived. It's not long-lasting. And they're always looking for more. They're always looking to up the ante. They're always looking to get more and more out of that first hit. But the problem is, like any addiction, the more you tap it, the more you continue to hit it, it's not going to be that original high, that original thought, that original feeling, so they keep trying. Oftentimes people say, like, hey, it might be a sex addiction. What I say is narcissists deal with a lot of addictions no matter what. Sex, gambling, drugs, alcohol, whatever it might be. A lot of times you'll see that paired with narcissism just so they can work on sedating their feelings, sedating their emotions. Now, when you think of sex, like, why have it be sex? Like, why is that one of the top ones? Well, the top ones a lot of times with sex is like the idea it connects so much. It connects your mind, your body, your emotions, your soul. There's a lot of intimacy that comes into play when the narcissist is with another person sexually. And when that control, when that aspect happens, when they interact like that, a lot of times you'll get to the place where they have that control over another person. They realize, hey, this tool is not only like helpful for me because I get something out of it that I'm entitled to, because remember the narcissist thinks they're entitled, but it also is a tool that I can use to manipulate and control another person. I'm sure countless of you guys have seen this in your life when the narcissist, when the toxic person was in your life and they pulled back. They were giving sex multiple times a day. They were giving sex all the time. Like, it was great. It was passionate. It was wonderful. It seemed like the best thing ever. And then all of a sudden it either stopped or it started to taper off. Sometimes that might be because they're starting to pull that control. They're starting to pull the devaluing. They're starting to pull back the love bombing. They're starting to pull you off the pedestal so they can control and they can manipulate the narrative of what's going to happen, what you're going to do, how you're going to perceive things. The other aspect that happens a lot of times as well is when the intimacy changes in the relationship, it's normally because the narcissist or that toxic person is finding it somewhere else. Oftentimes you'll see their behaviors and their habits that'll slowly shift or slowly change. They might be bringing different stuff into the house, different thoughts, different actions that weren't there initially. Maybe like they're trying, whenever they do try to be intimate, it's different. It feels different. They act different. Sometimes that's because they're picking up on different attributes and different traits with another person that they're bringing back to the bed. So with the aspect of sex, a lot of times that has a huge aspect of intimacy that the narcissist can use to control, to dominate you by saying, hey, I'm going to withhold this, or I'm going to give it whenever I see fit, and that way I can get what I want, and you're subject to my control, to my dominance. Also, the narcissist likes that aspect of sex because it is gratifying for them. They want the pleasure. They want the joy. They want what's actually going to happen in that moment because it makes them feel better. And when those chemicals are going off, it's that same addiction a lot of times that pops up, which can lead to sex addictions, but doesn't always necessarily mean that with a narcissist. To give you a little bit of an example, as I was learning about narcissism and as I was learning about who I was, there was an aspect in my life that because of being with multiple people, because of that cheating nature, that several people in my life were like, I think you're just a sex addict. Like, I think that's something prevalent in your past. You've been addicted to pornography in the past. You've been with multiple women. Like, I think this is something that you need to do. So ended up going to an intensive, and it was a sex addicts intensive. It was very intense. It was like 7 a.m. in the morning to like 8 p.m. at night. And it was very intense, like diving into a lot of stuff. And the good thing is coming out of that, I had more clarity. Like, I knew what sexual addiction was. I knew how it interacted with people. I knew how it messed with people, with the cycle, with, with their mindset, with the chemicals, with all the different stuff. But I walked away from saying, that's not me. And I knew that. And then I had to start looking at myself and being like, what is actually going on? Because I wasn't going out just looking for partners. I wasn't going out, paying for sex or anything like that. What I was looking for was something different. And as I started diving into it a little bit deeper, I started realizing the stuff that was actually going on inside me wasn't a sexual addiction, but was the aspect of narcissism. And I didn't want to own that. And I didn't want to admit that. At first, I'd rather blame it on anything else. But when I finally came to terms with it, I had to be able to say, hey, this isn't what I struggle with. The sex addiction is not what I struggle with. But I do struggle with entitlement. I do struggle with ownership. I do struggle with all these different attributes of narcissism that ultimately have me at being the god of my universe, and everybody else is supposed to serve me, pleasure me, whatever it might be. Just want to give you a little bit of narcissism and sex. Hopefully that helps.
What is the correlation between narcissistic abuse, narcissists, and sex addiction? What does it actually look like? How does it match up? Maybe you've wondered if individuals that are diagnosed with sex addiction might actually be narcissists, or narcissists that might be sex addicts. How do narcissists use sex addiction as an excuse for their behavior? Was your narcissist a sex addict? Did it seem like that was all that was on his mind, or that was all that the focus was? In this video, we're going to dive into some of the aspects of the connection between the two: narcissistic personality disorder and sex addictions. Now, a lot of narcissists have addictions, period, but today we're going to focus specifically on sex and why a lot of times it connects a lot with what's happening inside the abusive relationship, of how it feeds into the sense of entitlement and ownership, how it feeds in different pieces of what we're going to dive into today. Okay. If you guys are new here, my name is Ben Taylor. I'm a self-aware narcissist on this channel providing awareness about narcissistic abuse. The whole goal is to help people understand the toxicity of narcissistic abuse, what it's caused, what it's done, how it's destroyed, and to try to be able to use examples and ideas from what I've experienced and when talking to different clients of saying, hey, this is what's going on, to try to help wake you up, to move you in a place to help you grow, change, heal, and develop. You can start that journey today by going to escapetoxicity.com. It's our 7-day challenge for healing to try to help you move forward in understanding narcissism, narcissistic abuse, the guilt that comes with being with a narcissist, and also to understand the formula that we teach of helping you break free from the triggers that control you, that leave you in the trauma bond, that leave you ruminating, that leave you stuck mentally and emotionally with a toxic person, whether you're with them or whether you're not. So when we talk about this piece of addiction, sex addiction is a popular one inside narcissistic abuse. Oftentimes because of the entitlement, because of the piece of like, this makes me feel good. And because for a lot of people, it's sex. So like, it does feel good, but it needs to feel good in the right context and in the right way. For a narcissist, a lot of times that means your opinions, your feelings don't matter. And instead, it needs to be whatever they want in the moment. Now, first and foremost, when we talk about this aspect of sex addicts, one of the things I want to bring up is there is a decent amount of times, I believe, that narcissists are misdiagnosed as sex addicts. Of like, hey, this person's not a narcissist, he just has a sex addiction. Like sometimes you will see this where narcissists will go into therapy or counseling and they get this label. They're like, oh, I'm a sex addict. This is what it actually is. This is what's going on. And they might use that, we'll see in a moment, of it being just an excuse. But sometimes there'll be overlapping patterns of behaviors of what this actually looks like. Of like, oh, he's not a serial cheater because he's narcissistic. He's a serial cheater because he's a sex addict. And oftentimes it sounds different or it sounds better. Both conditions a lot of times have this preoccupation with sex, like a constant need of validation, like always looking for another person. So like it might be an aspect of sex, it might be an aspect of emotional, but it's this idea of like, let me have this communication, let me have this validation, this attention from other people. Narcissist has this insatiable desire of attention, of like, I want to have attention on me. I want to have the eyes on me. I want to have the focus on me. And covert is more like hidden in the corner of like, I still want the attention, but I just don't want it to be on me. It's a little bit nuanced, okay? But a lot of times you'll see this in the aspect of a sex addict. Like they want attention. Like they want another person to think they're the best thing ever. They want another person to love them, to worship them, to serve them. And it has the same desire as attention. But it's crucial to be able to understand the difference between genuine sex addiction. Like this piece stems from emotional and psychological issues. And narcissistic behaviors are driven typically by a need of control and power. Now, the interesting thing about sex addiction and narcissism, and it goes very much hand in hand with shame avoidance. Narcissists are avoiding shame at all costs. Like I need to avoid things that are going to make me feel bad or that are going to tell myself that I am bad. When you bring in sex addiction, it's another piece that involves the shame cycle of going through this aspect of shame over and over and over again, shame to sedate, sedate to shame, and back and forth to try to feel better about something that they feel bad about. And so they do the same act and it produces more shame. You see this at the same time where narcissists are running away from shame. So you can see how this connects, but it also pushes away at the same time. When you do this, and when this happens over and over and over again, you get someone who's addicted to it, but is also repulsed by it, but is still addicted to it. It's almost like the idea that not every drunk wants to be a drunk, but they're addicted to it. And so until they actually change that thought pattern and that process and remove the opportunity, they're not actually going to get healthy from it. They're not actually going to get free. So even with this aspect is like, if you have a narcissist that's a sex addict, you're probably not going to be able to work through the narcissism until they start getting help for the sex addiction. With sex addiction, it's also just as all other addictions, it's just meant as a way of sedating. Sedating, hiding, suppressing the feelings and the shame that they have inside. So you might have a narcissist that's engaging in sexual behavior, that's engaging in cheating. Okay, seeking out multiple partners, boosting up his ego, helping feel better, a sense of superiority of like, oh, I'm the best thing ever. This behavior sometimes will look like sex addiction. Like people will be like, wait a second, he might just be a sex addict. But in reality, it might be a manifestation of narcissistic tendencies and a means of just exerting power and control. Okay, this was like the mind-opening piece to me when I went to a sex addiction intensive. And I was there for multiple days going through this, being like, hey, this is for sex addicts. And as I walked away from that, it was comforting and concerning at the same time. Comforting because I'm like, I'm not a sex addict. Like after going through that, after hearing from a bunch of different people, after seeing what it is, like, yes, I get myself involved in relationships, but it's not because I'm a sex addict. At that point, it was also concerning because I was like, I think I know what it is. Because I already knew about narcissistic personality disorder, and I was looking for something else to be able to blame it on instead of it being me, instead of it being my fault. Which is why a lot of times, point number 2, narcissists will use sex addictions as an excuse. Okay, I'm a sex addict, so you have to give me what I want. I'm a sex addict, so like it's really not my fault. Like this is just who I am. By claiming to have an addiction, a lot of times they'll shift their focus away from manipulative behavior, what they're actually doing behind the scenes. So like you see them cheating, you see them hurting, and then they're like, but I'm just a sex addict, so like I can't really help it. Trying to make you not even notice and kind of like view them as the victim versus them being the perpetrator of actually hurting you, of actually going to the place of where they keep cheating on you over and over and over again, but blaming it on something that they quote unquote don't have any control over. Okay. By claiming to have an addiction, they shift your focus away. It's distraction. It's smoke and mirrors. And they try to make you get to the place where you have sympathy for them, where you're like, oh my gosh, like let me help them. Let me work with them. This manipulation is purposeful and it allows them to avoid taking responsibility. This aspect of using sex addiction as an excuse is the same aspect as gaslighting, as future faking. It's all smoke and mirrors to move you away from the actual topic to be able to say like, oh, have sympathy for me. Like understand I'm the victim when they're the ones that just hurt you. Like they will avoid taking responsibility at all costs. Even though it's hurting you, even though it's causing emotional, mental, physical, sexual harm to you, they'll cause it, and they'll continue moving forward in their destructive patterns. Okay? This happens over and over and over, and you'll see this be very destructive in your life when they get together with someone and contract an STD because they're not being safe, because they don't really care about that a lot of times, and then you're left with the damage. A narcissist, oftentimes it's caught cheating, might get to the place where they claim, hey, I have a sex addiction. Like, this is just what it is. I just have a lack of control. Like, I just need help. I need to work on this. I can't actually fix this. Portraying themselves as the victim. This tactic, again, allows them to blame and avoid taking accountability and responsibility. It leaves you confused. It leaves you uncertain of like, well, if they're a sex addict, like, what am I supposed to do? I guess give them more sex and that'll make them just only a sex addict to me. No, it's not going to help. Because the majority of time a narcissist is using I have a sex addiction as an excuse for their abusive behavior. The other thing that I want to be able to point out is sex addiction for a narcissist is oftentimes this tool of entitlement and ownership. Like it fulfills the bucket of a narcissist of like, oh, I'm actually getting what I want because 1, I'm entitled to you, and 2, I own you. And people always get upset and get frustrated when I say this, but a narcissist thinks that they own you. He does. I thought that part of love was me controlling other people, me owning other people, me saying, you are mine. So then why are you going out and hanging with these people? Why are you interacting with someone else? Like, you are mine. Why would you actually do that to me? Why would you reject me by going out with your friends? Okay, so sex addiction becomes another means to fulfill this need of attention and validation and control. This is piece of like, hey, if I can actually do this, it helps me feel better because I'm entitled to you. It feeds a sense of entitlement and ownership of other people, provides a platform, like a way for them to be able to exert power and exploit vulnerable people for their own gratification. Okay? Narcissists will do this over and over and over again because they're like, hey, I'm entitled to you. Like, you are meant to be in my life to serve me, to please me. Like, we're married, so that means I get what I want. Marital coercion, we talked about earlier today. Like, that's the whole aspect of like continuing to do this over and over and over, but blaming it on something. Saying, oh yeah, it's just a sex addiction. I can't really control it, but it's just fulfilling that aspect of entitlement and ownership. Okay? You're going to see this happen over and over and over, using you, using other people just as objects. You are just a transaction to satisfy their sexual desires. Like viewing you as possessions, transactions of like, hey, I'll give you this, let me get this. I'll give you money, let me get sex. I'll give you a car, let me get sex. Like there's multiple things, okay? But they believe they're entitled to you. So as a result, it throws out consent, it throws out your boundaries, and it just says, hey, I get to do what I get to do when I want to do it. Then we're back to the marital coercion, okay? If you're struggling with this and you're like, hey, I see this in my life. I see the narcissist doing this consistently, and he's blaming it on sex addiction. I don't know what to do. Please reach out for help. You can reach out to rawmotivations.com, click on the one-on-ones, or if you're like, hey, I just need to understand narcissism because he's been blaming it on sex addiction, but I think it's something more than that. Then go to escapetoxicity.com. 7-day challenge to healing to start you on that process and help you move forward in understanding more about narcissistic abuse. Escapetoxicity.com. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, rate, review, just share this with another person. If you're listening on the podcast, thank you so much. If you're watching today, thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you guys next time. Let's talk about covert narcissism and intimacy and start breaking down and unmasking some of the secrets about that. Maybe you've seen and you felt this confusing mix of an emotional high and low when you talk about your intimate relationship with a covert narcissist. Maybe the sex has been amazing and then it's been awful. Maybe it's been manipulative and it's been back and forth. And you're like, I don't get this. Like, I don't understand like the highs and lows, the pieces that get confusing in it. So we're going to dive in. We're going to talk about 3 different things about this as we walk through the piece of covert narcissists and intimacy. If you guys are new here, my name is Ben Taylor. I'm a self-aware narcissist on this channel to provide awareness of narcissistic abuse. I work to free people from trauma bonds and break them out of the cognitive dissonance, the rumination, the intrusive thoughts on a daily basis. We focus on this inside of the Clarity Challenge, which is our 45-day challenge that helps people break the trauma bond, going through a daily systematic process with daily assignments, community, and lectures from me talking through how to actually work through this step by step, breaking down the stuff you don't see from the narcissistic side to help you break free mentally and emotionally from a toxic person. You can check that out. You can go to claritychallenge.net today, claritychallenge.net. So diving into this whole aspect, covert narcissist and intimacy. First thing I want to talk to you about is the deceptive emotional closeness. There becomes this like illusion of intimacy that happens between you and a narcissist, making you think that there's something actually there. Like there's actually like a depth. But what it is just an illusion. And all it does is it typically leaves you feeling empty to the place of like, I still long for this like genuine connection with this other person. And so it feels like there should be something there. It feels like sometimes there is something there. And then all of a sudden you're like, it's not there. That's because narcissists are masters at manipulating through charm and through how they show up on a day-to-day basis, convincing you of a different version of themselves. Oftentimes making you feel deeply connected on the surface. So it's a little bit different. It's like there's this connection there. You have this connection, this bond with another person, but then you realize after you've been with them for a while, it's only surface level. It's a tight connection and it feels great, but it's only surface level. Oftentimes you'll see this where the narcissist will get a lot of information about you and get really close to you, but you have no clue about who he actually is. Often I see this, okay? Now, using this in a way, narcissists will use carefully calculated behaviors, mirroring and love bombing, especially early on, to create an illusion of emotional intimacy. Now, you'll see this with mirroring a lot of times. Like, if I can mirror you, you're going to see something come back to you that you like because it's part of you. Okay, so like something you like something you like to do, a place you like to go, a hobby you have, movies, music, whatever it may be, something like that, and the narcissist mirrors it back to you. Then you have different attributes of your personality, how you talk, how you act, how you walk, all different types of things. Narcissists can mirror different stuff. So they're going to mirror stuff back at you. You start and fall in love with that connection. She's like, oh my gosh, he gets me. He understands me. He does the same exact thing. Can't believe it. A lot of times it's mirroring. Of reflecting it back at you so you fall in love with another version of you that they're creating to try to build a deep connection. But it's just an illusion. It's just a false aspect. It's just a fake version, if that makes sense. Okay, so when below this aspect of the illusion it's just a facade, hiding the true motive underneath. Like to be able to gain control, validation over you. Like, that's the whole piece, is like, what do I have to do to control you? What do I have to do to build a connection so that when I say jump, you jump. When I say move, you move. Like, that's the whole aspect. The narcissist wants to get that control piece. Now, the hard part is there's like this closeness that happens and this like hidden agenda of like, I don't know what to actually believe. I don't know what's actually true. Like, he says that he loves me, but it doesn't show up that way. It doesn't show that he actually cares. So think of it this way, like, you get involved with a covert narcissist, and at the beginning, it feels amazing. Like, the love bombing comes out, showering you with affection, that shows up like vulnerability, of like he's talking to you about like his childhood, of things that have affected him. Seems like you have shared interests, you like the same movies and music and genres of stuff, and it makes you feel like there's a deep emotional bond. It feels like this piece is like growing together, and you're like, oh my gosh, we are soulmates, we're the best thing ever. But then over time, you start to realize that some of this intimacy was a facade, was fake, designed to manipulate and control your emotions. Now, this is one of the hardest things that you're going to see in and after the relationship as you start to see it. Because you start to see it, you start to doubt, and you're like, was anything real? Did he actually care about me? Was everything fake? Was I not good enough? Why didn't he want to be honest with me? Those and many more questions start to plague your mindset, and you're like, I don't even understand. I don't even know what's happening or what was actually real. This is because we go into the point number 2, just the roller coaster of hot and cold, of going back and forth, of going up and down in the relationship that confuse and emotionally manipulate you. Narcissists do this by alternating between affection and attention and detachment and disconnection. Okay, like, I'm going to connect with you and we're going to be great and you're going to get all this love and affection from me, and then all of a sudden pull back and you're like, what did I do wrong? Like there's something happening. What happened? And narcissists can go back and forth creating this emotional turmoil, and they don't get affected by it. Okay, it's more of this like push-pull of like, let me do this to be able to control you, to be able to manipulate you. But it's not like their emotions are going back and forth. A lot of times it's like, nope, gonna do this. Don't like you anymore. Sometimes it can be an aspect of like perceived betrayal, of like, oh, well, you went and hung out with your family, so you're betraying me. So yeah, no, I'm not talking to you today. Okay, pushing you back and forth. It doesn't connect the same way to them as it does mess up with you, like mess up your head. Okay, think of it like alternating between showing affection and then withdrawing emotionally, creating this cycle, this constant cycle of highs and lows. Oftentimes I'll refer to it as intermittent reinforcement of the highs and the lows in the relationship. Think of it almost like a heart monitor, up and down, over and over. And you're like, it's amazing, it's awful. It's amazing, it's awful. It's amazing, it's awful. And over a period of time, you start to believe that it's more amazing than it is awful. Because the awful, it's easier to disconnect from and only view the amazing. This is why people looking back on the relationship start to think it wasn't that bad. Because all they're seeing in the moment is the positive. They're not seeing the negative stuff that actually happened because they're typically pushing it away or discounting it. So this actually puts you in a place where you're uncertain and you're dependent on that other person. You're craving like the positive attention. Like, you're fearing like, what if they actually detach? What if they actually leave and actually leave this time? What if he actually leaves me alone? What do I do then? And it's built that way to make you feel addicted, to make you feel like this piece of like almost like whiplash back and forth of like, I'm used to this, so what do I do without it? Okay? Now, you're going to have a narcissist that's going to try to distract you by giving you maybe love for a brief period of time and then withdraw away and all of a sudden become distant. This leaves you on this emotional roller coaster we talked about where you're like, wait a second, was it my fault? Did I do something? And you start to doubt yourself. You start to believe alternate versions of what's actually true, thinking maybe I need to go back and apologize for what? I didn't do anything. But it puts you in a place where you're anxious, confused, and desperate for the return of that positive affection from the narcissist. This is where after the relationship, you get out, but you're like, I still want to go back. And it's a piece of the trauma bond that sucks you back into the toxic relationship. Then we move into the third aspect, which is exploiting the emotional piece of your openness. Like the manipulation piece, like through the vulnerability, through the different pieces that are happening there. So like what I mean by this is a narcissist will use your vulnerabilities to gain control and sympathy, hiding what's actually going on underneath. Now there's a couple sides to this. One, they'll use your vulnerability to try to connect with you. And then two, they'll try to bring their vulnerability to the table to try to make you connect with them. Now, this is the one that people get confused on for the narcissist. They're like, but he was being vulnerable. He was telling me like really deep and really hard stuff. But narcissists oftentimes pretend to be vulnerable and pretend to share deepest struggles, making it feel like you are privileged to get the information. Like they trusted you with such personal information and you're like, wow, like he must really care about me to be able to share this. But a couple things that happen here. One that's kind of popular is narcissists that are vulnerable, one about their past. Really far distant past. I was abused when I was 4 years old. Therefore, this is why I'm insecure. This is why I pushed you back and forth. Okay. So using something in the past to justify behaviors in the present. But then also vulnerable about stuff in the past is a popular tactic that narcissists will use. Not being vulnerable about the present. This is how I feel. This is what I'm working on. This is what I'm dealing with. You don't see that. Okay. With narcissism, the vulnerability piece is more calculated. It's more like a tactic in order to gain sympathy. If I can be vulnerable about my pet that died when I was 6 years old and caused a traumatic experience, you're going to have sympathy for me, and you're also going to feel that I'm actually vulnerable when I'm not. I'm just saying stuff that happened in the past. Another piece is sometimes narcissists will use this fake vulnerability of the past using other people's stories. We've seen this happen too, where you realize and you connect the dots that they never had this situation happen to them, but they use someone else's story as their own to play the victim and to come across more vulnerable. It's pretty wild, but we've seen it happen several times where narcissists will use other people's experiences saying this happened to them to get that piece of sympathy. Like the whole goal of the sympathy and of the vulnerability is to slowly put it on you so that you feel like you're responsible for the narcissist's emotional well-being. Okay? So think of it this way, like you get to a place where you empathize with the covert narcissist's apparent vulnerability. So the things that have happened. You might share stories of the past, leading you to feel that urge of let me support, let me protect them. The narcissist wants you to feel that, because if you feel that, you start taking responsibility for them. It leads you down this place of like, oh, let me support, let me help, let me fix, let me protect. And it starts to build a bond. Okay, the thing you don't realize is the narcissist is using this to manipulate you, to manipulate your emotions, and to get control over the relationship. This is the whole goal. If you find yourself and you're stuck in this place of where you feel like you are stuck and the narcissist is in control of you, your mind, will, emotions, they're in control of you, the trauma bond, the rumination, the intrusive thoughts, the limiting beliefs, you feel crazy because you're like, I don't want this person in my life, but I still want to go back to them. That's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with the trauma bond, the cognitive dissonance piece. In order to break that, we walk you through a step-by-step process where I put you in a community of other people, of like-minded people that are going through the same exact journey, and put you in a step-by-step process of what he's thinking, of what you're going through, of how to be able to break through the aspect of the trauma bond and ultimately be free. If you'd like to hear more about that, would love to encourage you to listen to other survivors that have talked about it. Go to claritychallenge.net. There's about 5 or 6 videos on there from other people who've gone through the program to have you understand how it works, how it helps, and how it's been influential in their lives. So check it out today. Go to claritychallenge.net to be able to move forward in your breakthrough. A topic that doesn't get addressed that often is sex with a narcissist. And I don't step into this just on my own because I don't know where that would go. We try to find at least a little bit of a guide to walk through this. And so if you haven't seen or if you haven't heard of this book, The Passive Aggressive Narcissist with Debbie Mirza, it's a fantastic book when we're talking about covert narcissists. Narcissists that are flying underneath the radar. They're still the same as regular narcissists. They're just more subtle. They're like in stealth mode. They're like the spy version of the narcissist, trying to be able to minimize different things that might look bad to society and manipulate you in more covert ways. So in chapter 8, it talks about sex with a covert narcissist. And I want to kind of step into this a little bit to talk through it. So it reads here, sex might be one of the most common methods of gaslighting a covert narcissist used to control and manipulate. Most people don't notice. It's incredibly insidious. You can't get any more personal and vulnerable than your sex life. Covert narcissists use sex to manipulate through the psychological means, making you feel as if something is wrong with you. When someone manipulates and controls you through sex, they set you up to think something is wrong with you, so you blame yourself. You feel shame, and it affects your confidence, your self-worth. You lose your ability to stand up for yourself because they're attacking the deepest parts of you. It's this piece that starts to attack at you, makes you feel like you're not worth anything, lowers your value, makes you feel not good enough. Whether that's a direct putting you down, or whether that's the subtle things that happen inside of being with a covert narcissist, slowly degrading and pulling away from you. Oftentimes pulling away and making you feel like you're sexually unattractive. You're not pretty. You're not beautiful. Making sure some of those words don't come out of their mouth because they know that that's what you actually want. You feel embarrassed. You shut down. It's incredibly personal. You believe whatever is wrong with your sex life is your fault, which is exactly what the narcissist wants you to think. You have to remember, he wants you to think that you're the problem in all areas of your life. But when we bring this into the piece of sex, he wants you to make sure that you think that it's your fault that you're not connecting this way, that you're not having sex, that you're not being intimate. He thinks it's your fault, and he wants you to make sure that you think it's your fault. When you have sex with a covert narcissist, their pleasure is the most important thing. It's all about how they feel. You get the message you don't deserve pleasure, and you're subtly punished for having your own feelings, reactions, confusion about what is happening in the bedroom. Your feelings don't matter to a covert narcissist. It's kind of a trend with narcissists. We're just bringing it into the bedroom with this. Susan didn't have a sex drive for most of her marriage and couldn't figure out why. When she married her covert narcissist, she was young and a virgin. She had nothing for comparison. Feeling embarrassed and ashamed, she wondered what was wrong with her. Her husband seemed fine. He wanted sex, so she concluded she must be the problem. Here is the thing, like when brought into this piece, covert narcissists will slowly make you feel like it's the problem when they're the ones causing it. Like so many women have their bodies shut down because emotionally they're not safe. Like their bodies know they're not safe. They're not in a safe, loving, caring environment, so their bodies shut down. They're like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I put out? Why can't I actually enjoy this? Why does this not feel good? And it's because he's put you in a place where you can't actually even express yourself because you don't feel safe to start off with. She couldn't handle the thought of someone else judging her. She had enough of that from herself and her husband, so she stayed quiet about it for years. Over decades, she tried to just fix herself. When nothing helped, she wondered if she just wasn't a sexual person. Complete gaslighting making her believe that that's what she was. She got to be a place that was manipulated, used, and made to think she was not by her ex-covert narcissist. She is now healing from those years and being shown what real love actually looks like and feels now that she got with someone who actually knows the truth, that she is a very sexual person, but she was manipulated and used to feel that way. Sex is one of the most powerful ways a covert narcissist controls the victims. When you have no desire for sex and can't figure out why, you feel bad that you are letting the other partner down. They will let you know in various ways how much you are letting them down. They won't worry about you, about what you're feeling and your struggles. That is not a concern to them because this relationship is not about you or even the two of you. It is about the covert narcissist. You need to understand that is always going to be the case inside of all of this. You are never part of it. It's just the narcissist. That's all he cares about. Dawn dated a covert narcissist. Sex was great. They seemed to have an amazing connection. It was easy. He was romantic. He said all the right things that made her feel great about herself and her body. She felt pretty and sexy. They were sexually active. This added to her believing that she was the perfect match for him. It is common for this to happen in the beginning. Covert narcissists mirror you sexually as well as emotionally during the love bombing stages. They become you, act like you, so it feels like you are in sync. You can't believe how good every part of this relationship. But soon after Dawn and the covert narcissist got married, things started to feel different. The love bombing stage was over. The subtle devaluing, demeaning stage began. She didn't notice anything different about sex except how she felt. She told Brad, her covert narcissist husband, that she didn't know why, but every time they had sex, she felt used. It didn't make any sense to her. But they were both open when it came to communication, so she wanted to let him know how she was feeling. He looked confused, acted like he cared, and seemed as though he wanted to hear. Even though Brad's words were nice, Dawn could feel his anger towards her underneath them. The conversation began with her telling him how she felt used and somehow ended up with her apologizing and comforting him. How many of you resonate with that? How many times have you started a conversation? It could be about anything, but how many times have you started a conversation to be able to talk to him about your feelings and you end up apologizing for your feelings? Like you're comforting him for something that he did. We see this all the time. Covert narcissists aren't interested in looking at their own issues or changing any of their behaviors. And so we got to the place that she wasn't able to show up. She wasn't able to be there in a sexual way. She felt this place of pressure from him. Dawn's body knew that she was not being loved and that she was not emotionally safe with Brad, so her body shut down. She lost all desire for sex. Brad told Dawn how this affected him. He had needs and she wasn't fulfilling them. She felt terrible. Even though all this started with her feeling used because her body, her intuition knew that she was being used, it turned into her taking the blame for her diminishing sex life, feeling a heavy burden of shame and guilt and believing that something was wrong with her. She tried reading books and articles. She went to therapy. She tried all kinds of things to figure out what was wrong with her. And at times she wondered if her husband had a part in this, but she couldn't figure out how. So she took all the blame and Brad did nothing to stop her from doing so. The narcissist in your life, he wants you to feel bad about you. Then he doesn't have to acknowledge that he's actually doing it. Years went by, life kept going, and they had kids, jobs, etc., and they would address the sex issue here and there. Sex happened infrequently. Brad used this to control Dawn for years. She felt like a terrible wife. Her husband became more and more distant. He punished her passive-aggressively for years and she took it because she had started to believe that she deserved it. When he was distant on dates together, irritable on every vacation, sabotaging every birthday, she felt like she shouldn't expect any better because she wasn't giving him much sex, so he didn't owe her his love and his kindness. Brad made comments over the years about how easy it would be for Dawn to be a man or wondering if she was a lesbian, and she gained weight over time. He made demeaning comments that kept her self-image low. She started to see herself as overweight, non-sexual, hopeless disappointment. This is what covert narcissists do. They rely on your pity. They rely on your tender heart. They manipulate you into believing that you are terrible. When this happens, they have you in the palm of your hand and can control you for years. It was all about Brad. He wanted Dawn to prove his manhood to him. He did not care about how she felt. He did not care about her pleasure because he loved her so much and delighted in her feeling good. She never felt loved by him in bed because the truth was she wasn't. She never felt cherished because she wasn't. Her covert narcissist husband would have found something else wrong with her, no matter what. And so you need to understand the narcissist is always looking for, how do I blame something else on you? This is going to happen inside the bedroom. This is going to happen to a place where your body starts to shut down because you know emotionally and mentally your body feels used and abused. It feels not just like dirty, but it feels like, hey, someone is using me to get what they want. It's not actually this connected interchange of emotion and feeling and love and desire. We're not actually connected on an emotional level. It's just him coming in and using me. But the thing is, a narcissist in your life, he will make you feel like it's your fault that you can't perform. He'll make it feel like it's your fault for putting you in an unsafe environment and then being like, why aren't you performing like you're in a safe environment? How many of you resonate with this video? Because I need you to understand it's so easy for you to be stuck in the trap thinking that it's your fault, thinking that you could have done something better, thinking that you're just not a sexual person, when in reality, you're just not a safe person. Because he hasn't created an environment for you to feel emotionally and mentally safe to actually be the person that you know you need to be. Hopefully this helps. If you need help breaking free from a toxic relationship, you feel trapped of how he's beat you up mentally and emotionally, and you're ready to actually step into freedom, go to rawmotivations.com/breakthrough today. Have you ever felt like your partner's behavior around sex is just manipulative? Leaving you feeling confused, leaving you feel used, leaving you feel like they're just using and abusing you to get what they want. Maybe you wonder how narcissists utilize sex as a tool for distraction, sedation, and even addiction. We're going to dive into a little bit of that today, talking about the complex dynamics of how narcissists exploit sexual intimacy in relationships, how it's detrimental on you, and how it ultimately hurts and destroys a lot of the relationship because of what they're doing to manipulate you. If you guys are new here, my name is Ben Taylor. I'm a self-aware narcissist on this channel to provide awareness about narcissistic abuse. I'm the founder of Raw Motivations, the creator of the Narc app, and your guide in the 45-day Clarity Challenge that you can access at claritychallenge.net. The whole goal of what we do is to help people break free of the trauma bond, get rid of the rumination, eradicate the triggers, and give you the tools inside the challenge to help you move forward, getting rid of those limiting beliefs and the toxicity that has been impressed upon you. Well, when we talk through this aspect of narcissists and sex, it normally pops up where we're talking about cheating, we're talking about affairs, 100%. Like, that's huge in the whole realm of it. Okay, but today we're going to be talking through just a nuanced piece of using and manipulating and utilizing sex as distractions, sedations, and addictions. So the first one I want to jump into is distraction from the real issue. Narcissists oftentimes use sex as a means to divert your attention from the problems that are in the relationship. So like you're having an issue, you're having a problem, they might use and abuse sex in a way to either manipulate or control your perspective of the situation, making you get to the place where you're having to beg for it, or getting to the place where you feel shunned for even wanting sex. You're going to see this a lot of times with covert narcissists that will push you away, and it seems like they will never even want sex at all, because for them, it's this aspect of I'm still controlling you. I'm still manipulating you. You're still coming after me, wanting something that I have. There's multiple different pieces of this, so it's hard to be able to talk to just one, because for every one, there's like 5 others that do it differently, okay? So I'm just trying to cover as best I can. Narcissists will use sex as a means to divert attention from the problem at hand, or they'll use it to divert attention from their harmful behaviors. Like, people will see this all the time, and I'll hear people say this, of like, our sex connection was just amazing. Then you have narcissists on the other side, and they're like, yeah, no, our sex was awful. Okay, because sometimes it's used in a manipulative way. Let me do everything you like in the bedroom so that I can do everything I want otherwise and still get away with it. Because you're still going to come back because you're connected, you're bonded, you're stuck with me intimately. So sometimes narcissists will focus on the physical aspect, preventing you from addressing the emotional issues, from the things that are actually divisive and hurting you even more than a lack of sex. But it's like, let me just do this over and over and over again, because if I do this, if I connect with you on a sexual way, then it minimizes the need for emotional connection. Maybe we can just keep going forward and it's not going to be that big a deal. This manipulation leaves you isolated, invalidated, and often alone, because your concerns are pushed to the side. You're moved to the side because you no longer matter. Your emotional needs don't matter. Instead, they're just connecting on a sexual level. Think of it this way. You might have got to the place where you're trying to discuss how he's hurt you. Like the things that he's done that has put you down, the comments that he said, and the neglectful behavior that he's shown you, but he still responds, not talking about those, but responds by initiating sex. So it's like, let me get connected to you in a different way. It is distracting you from the conversation. It's distracting you, leaving core issues unresolved. So like sex a lot of times is used as a distraction piece. Let me distract you from the actual problem. Let me distract you from what's actually going on so that you don't pay attention to it. Now, where does it come into the next level of sedation? Sedation with a narcissist, and through this emotional manipulation, sex serves as this tool of having an emotional sedation. Keeps you entangled in a toxic relationship and not having to look at the truth of the situation. Narcissists will use this to sedate their own needs, to sedate as an addiction that we'll talk about in a minute, but to sedate from the actual truth of the situation. This happens all the time where the narcissist is exploiting you, exploiting your emotional vulnerabilities, but using sex as a way to create this temporary sense of closeness and connection. You're going to see this early on in the relationship of trying to build and form a relationship very quickly. You're going to see it in multiple different facets where the narcissist will try to use sex and to leverage it as a way to be able to connect with you. Sometimes they do this and you feel like it's the best thing ever because they're trying to serve you in a way that will only get what they want. Like, if I can get connected to you, if I can get this bond with you, it'll be genuine. It'll feel good. When in reality, it's just trying to build a bond, but it's not actually having a depth. A lot of times a narcissist will do this with sex to try to be able to sedate their own emotions. Like, I don't know how I feel. I don't want to process how I feel. Let me go ahead and do something. Let me go ahead and be with someone. Let me go ahead and use sex as a sedation tactic so I don't have to feel. You see this not just with sex, but you see this with other addictions that we're going to talk about here in a second. You might have this aspect with a narcissist is offering intimacy as a way after an argument to get you to be soothed from your emotional pain. You're like, oh, this feels better because we're connected now. No, it's actually rewiring your mindset and making you think that the awful thing is actually not that bad. It's slowly training you and readjusting the chemicals in your body, making you think that this abusive thing gets this reward, so it's okay for this abusive thing to happen. Like, it's okay that I just got hurt this bad because then this happened afterwards. And it starts to mess with your mind, and it starts to have you put up with more and more and more abuse because that emotional pain is getting fixed in a physical way. And it starts to sedate not just the narcissist, but it can end up sedating you from the pain that's actually happening in the relationship. And it gives you this aspect of short-lived comfort. It doesn't address the underlying issues. Then you see the piece of addictions, where the narcissist starts this to create an addictive dynamic around sex to keep you attached. We're not even talking yet about the narcissist being addicted to sex, but just how they're creating the environment for you to be addicted to them, to continue to try to come back to them, to continue to try to interact with them, to get to the place where they're giving you sex and then they're withholding it. They're providing it and then they're pulling it back. And it triggers this cycle of anticipation and reward. Pavlov's theory, right? With the cat, ring the bell, get a treat. The cat's like salivating because it needs the treat because it rang the bell. It thinks that's what it's supposed to get. It's a narcissist training you to respond that way, to be a servant that way, to be a slave to how they're going to respond when they want to respond to make sure they get what they want from you. This leads to getting to a place where you're dependent on their approval, where you're dependent on their validation. You're dependent on, oh, I have to do this for this person. And this dependency strengthens the narcissist's control over you, where you get used to looking for this validation, looking for this acceptance, looking for this peace that maybe this person will actually love me this time. Maybe they'll actually connect with me this time because they're bringing in the emotional aspect and the physical aspect to further bond you together. This is why it's so hard for people to be intimate and have sex and not get emotionally tangled. Like not to start having feelings for each other, not to have different levels of emotion where they have to either shut that off or where they get all confused in the relationship. But a narcissist will use sex as a way to distract you from the problem, as a way to sedate themselves from their emotions, as a way for you to sedate from dealing with the emotions and to develop an addiction that you start to come back to them no matter what. And then we talk about the narcissist having a sex addiction. This is a popular one because you'll see a lot of narcissists that will hide under the guise of like, well, I just have a sex addiction, so therefore you just have to take me as it is. And you're like, okay, I get that. And the narcissist is like, yep, so come serve me. Because they want what they want when they want it, anytime they want it. This whole idea of like, you'll find narcissists that will identify more as a sex addict and be proud of that because it gives them leverage over you. Well, this is who I am. This is who I am. So I guess you're just going to have to live with me. This is what I want. This is what I need. If you don't give this to me, then I'll go out and I'll do it with someone else. Leveraging, guilt tripping, manipulating you to get what they want in the moment. Narcissists will use this to be able to control you. Are you at the place where you're tired of being controlled? You're tired of being controlled by him, by his actions, by his words, by the things that are happening on a day-to-day basis, the guilt trip, the lies, the belittling. Are you tired of it? If you're tired of it, I want you to go to claritychallenge.net today. There's a list of multiple people there that have sent in videos and that are talking on this page, telling you how they were tired of it and what they did to change it, how they broke free, how they changed their mindset, how they were able to be liberated from the toxicity that had them in bondage for such a long period of time, where they were trapped mentally, emotionally, sexually, financially, physically, to be able to be free. And that's where they are now. Free and moving forward in their growth, in their healing, in their development, into being the person that they're called to be. The question is, will you? Will you actually take this step to be free from the toxicity? To be free from the stories that you're telling yourself that it was great, but sometimes bad. That the sex was amazing, but yeah, he was also abusive. But maybe this, but maybe that. But maybe if I get validated from that person, but if you don't. You're looking for approval, and you don't know who you are. If you're ready to break free from that and move forward in your healing, I want you to go to claritychallenge.net. Watch the videos that are on the page. Don't just take my word for it. Watch the videos and then make a decision for you of, is this going to help you change, grow, and develop or not? Choice is yours. claritychallenge.net. Have you been with a covert narcissist? One of the things we want to talk about today is covert narcissists and sex. What's actually going on underneath the surface? How is this actually controlling and manipulating? Is it abusive? What's actually going on when we talk about a covert narcissist and sexual relationships? If you guys are new here, my name is Ben Taylor. I'm a self-aware narcissist on this channel to provide awareness of narcissistic abuse. I help break people free every single day from the trauma bond, from the rumination, from the fog that they're stuck in by being with a toxic person. I'm the founder of Raw Motivations and your guide in the 45-day Clarity Challenge. You can access at claritychallenge.net to start breaking you free today. When we talk through this piece of sex with a covert narcissist, there's a lot of different things that affect you that we'll dive into, and a lot of different pieces that start becoming more manipulative, not just on a relationship level, but on an intimate level. And so when you're with a covert narcissist and when you're being intimate, a lot of times it will become an unsettling experience, like not something that you are used to and not something that feels comfortable. Now, it's going to feel confusing because of the piece of cognitive dissonance, like not sure what to believe, what they say or what they do. This cognitive dissonance piece is very clearly seen inside covert relationships with a narcissist that are sexual in nature because they'll appear charming and attentive, but underneath lies the disturbing reality of how they're actually using you. So when we talk through covert narcissists, they're normally using sex as a means of control. Another way to be able to control and manipulate you. This could be as simple as creating dominance over you. This could be as simple as like trying to hold and push back to try to make you feel better or worse about yourself. There's a lot of different ways that a narcissist will control you, but a lot of times in the covert aspect, you're going to have sex used as a weapon sometimes to try to elicit this control over you, getting you to comply, getting you to do the things that they might want you to do. There's different levels of emotional sexual manipulation. And the hard part is this leaves you feeling like you've been used and emotionally drained. You're going to get to this place where you might move where the narcissist ends up just getting what they want because they're viewing you just as a transaction. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Like I want you to think like you might have a narcissist in your life that gives you affection or gives you attention in intimate moments, but then afterwards like withdrawing completely. Maybe emotionally distant, maybe like leaving, maybe like just moving away from the whole subject piece of it, and it leaves you just lonely and confused. And you're like, I don't feel filled because like this just happened and it just felt like it was a good moment. So I lock onto that, but then after it just kind of like dissipates, it just disappears. And this piece of like connection, a lot of times the narcissist is running from because that connection piece feels honest, feels vulnerable, feels like I would be exposed if I'm actually going to interact with that. So like being connected is like filling a bucket in one sense for the narcissist, then he's like running away with the bucket. Okay, think of it that way. Sometimes you're going to have this where the narcissist is using this just for their own means, for their own end. Majority of time we talk about narcissism, it is focused on him. It is focused on the narcissist, and that is it. Not on anybody else, not anything else, just on him. So a lot of times you're going to see where the narcissist is going to focus so much of getting what he wants, no matter what. This oftentimes is going to lead into the uncomfortable topic that people don't want to hear about that's typically called coercion, okay, or marital rape. Different aspects where the narcissist views you as a transaction, views you as a piece of property, views you as a person that they're allowed to do whatever they want to because you're either married or together. Now, narcissist doesn't really care whether you're married or not. They just care about I own you. We're together, so I own you. And so in this aspect, a lot of times there's this entitlement of like, give me what I want. And going through this process, oftentimes, a narcissist will completely disregard your view of no or not wanting to do something and disregard that and continue moving forward. Now, underneath the guise of marriage, A lot of times you have a narcissist that will do coercion or marital rape, where it's just going to happen no matter what you say because, well, I'm the husband, I get to do what I want. When in reality, that's not respectful and that's not honoring to you at all. And that's not really what a marriage is supposed to be. But a lot of times you'll see that in narcissistic households, and you'll see that in narcissistic Christian households where they view, well, I have the dominance, I'm the better person, all this kind of stuff to lord it over you. Okay, so that happens a lot, and it's an uncomfortable topic for a lot of people, but you need to hear it happens. You might have experienced this where it just felt like it was your obligation or your duty to be able to put out or to be able to do what he wanted you to do. Like, it's not. Okay, because a lot of times a narcissist will use you and manipulate you to get what they want in the moment. So in moving into this, like, it becomes very abusive in a couple different ways. Like, a narcissist disregards your boundaries and just completely bulldozes over what you actually want or what you need or what you feel. So think of it this way: you might get put into an uncomfortable situation sexually that you didn't want to be in, and involving yourself in threesomes that you're like, I never wanted to do this, but I did this. I felt off afterwards, but I wanted to do this for him because it's what he wanted. And in reality, like, he just got off on it and he continued moving forward. But you felt awful because it crossed your boundaries. Sometimes it'd be like where you don't get a chance to have your needs prioritized. Like, it doesn't really matter like how it's working for you or how life is going for you. It just matters about the narcissist. So then he's going to continue to ramp it up. Gaslighting, manipulating, like doing emotional things to manipulate you during and or after sex. So you're going to see this happen. And this leads to a place where you're feeling the violation and you're feeling the emotional turmoil of being in this toxic relationship and having it affect you at a deeply significant soul level sexually. So think of it this way: like, he pressures you into doing things you're not comfortable with. Like I mentioned even before, like even a threesome or like something you're not comfortable with as far as like a sexual act. Okay. And then later dismisses your feelings when you're trying to talk about it or when you're trying to say like, hey, that was uncomfortable. I didn't like that. I don't want to do that. Making you question your own boundaries and your own consent. Making you question like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't have done this. Maybe I shouldn't have said no. Maybe I should have done this anyways. And the narcissist is going to play that game. He's going to play that game with you to make you feel bad so he can come back around next time and get what he wants. That's all it boils down to, is a narcissist looking at, what can I do to get what I want? How do I need to manipulate you to get what I want? What do I need to change, modify, or develop, or twist, or confuse to get what I want? You have to remember, narcissism, it comes back all to what the narcissist wants. It all rotates and revolves around that. And so doing this and having this happen in the relationship becomes something that affects you very, very deeply. Like, it has emotional and psychological effects and physical effects. You know, regardless of how he's actually treating you mentally and emotionally, there's a lot of times where narcissists will practice a lot of things that are very unsafe to you, to other people. Maybe there's cheating involved, there's not protection. Like, there's a lot of different things that he won't care about because he only cares about himself. You're going to see this a lot of times with a narcissist that is passing like STDs to other people because he doesn't care. He doesn't care how it's actually affecting the other person. All he wants is what it feels like for him and what he gets in the moment. So even if he knows, hey, I have this, he's not typically going to tell anybody because he just wants to get what he wants to get in the moment. Okay. But this produces this aspect of emptiness where you feel empty. You have low self-esteem and there's confusion about your own desires, your own boundaries, because you're put down. You're told, oh, well, you just, you're not good enough. Well, this is what you should do. This is what you need to do. And you're told a lot of things to make you feel awful and inferior unless you do what the narcissist wants you to do. And sometimes this emotional manipulation will play back and forth. Well, he'll like want to break up with you, or he'll like pull away from you. And you'll like set up a boundary and he'll be like, no, this is what I want to do. And you're like, no, I don't want to do this. And he's like, well, fine. Well, we're not having sex then. And like pull back and try to emotionally manipulate you to get you to be like, no, wait, okay, I'll do it. Just to be able to get that consent from you to make you do what he wants you to do. There's like a high a lot of times of the narcissist getting you to break your own boundaries. It's one thing when he breaks your boundaries. It's another thing when he gets you to break your own boundaries. Because then in his mind, he's like, see, I didn't do anything wrong. It's not that big of a deal. And she doesn't care because she broke her own boundaries. So it must not be that big of a deal. And so you need to understand, like, it has such huge, deep effects on you. Like, it confuses, it hurts, it messes up so much of people's lives when this is actually happening. And so you might find that after years of being with a covert narcissist, you find it extremely challenging and hard to be able to trust anyone, to be able to enjoy intimacy with a positive person, with a healthy person, and you struggle with this feeling of like, am I actually worth it? We find a lot of people that have been with a toxic, narcissistic, a covert abuser, and they have this question of, am I good enough? Or why am I not worth it? And you start to balance and you start to believe your worth based on that person's opinion. And the thing I need you to understand is like your worth is not defined by another person's opinion of you. It feels like it in the moment because that's what you're used to. That's what you see. That's what you have exemplified in your life in being with this toxic person. But your worth is not defined by his opinion of you. Your worth is defined by what you do, by how you actually show up, by the intrinsic value that you have as a human being on this planet. The hard part is oftentimes people will give that away to another person, saying, hey, you can define who I am. Let's start working on you defining who you are. To have you actually step up in your power and your certainty and your confidence in knowing who you are and knowing the direction that you want to go. If I can help you with that, I want to show you those steps inside Clarity Challenge. It's a 45-day challenge for you to start unlocking who you are, break the trauma bond, learn how to be able to work through the emotional triggers that the narcissist places on you and that you want to react to so that you can be in control of you, of who you are, of the direction you're going to go, and start stepping in that direction every single day. If I can help you with that, go to claritychallenge.net, listen to a couple of other survivors that have graduated from that challenge, and jump in. That way you can start moving forward in your healing, in your growth, and in your development. A lot of narcissists struggle with addiction. And the thing with addiction with a narcissist is a lot of times it's used as a sedating mechanism to make them feel better about themselves. However, a lot of times people ask, like, are narcissists sex addicts? Because a lot of times people see sex addicts and narcissists corresponding really quickly. So let's check and see what it looks like today as we define sex addiction and also look into some of my story about some of that as well. If you guys are new here, my name is Ben Taylor. I'm a self-aware narcissist on this channel to provide awareness, growth, healing, and change. We do it on all the different platforms. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter. You could probably repeat it with me by now, but we're on all those platforms with the name Raw Motivation, so check it out. If you want to talk to me sometime, I'm trying to work with people in helping rewire their mindset. Once they've gotten away from the toxic person, of being able to find clarity from the confusion, from the crazy making of being with that person. Oftentimes it gets hidden under the guise of maybe a sex addict or maybe other different things in the relationship that makes people wonder, was what I suffered actually narcissism, or am I the narcissist? Am I the toxic one? A lot of the stuff we talk about is to try to help bring you clarity of understanding what's going on. We do that by helping you rewire your mindset and reduce the triggers that are affecting you on a day-to-day basis, making you react, making you respond, making you have an awful day. So we try to work on that to change the story, to be able to change your life, and to be able to get you free. Not just mentally and physically, but in your mind and in your emotions of saying, hey, I don't have that attraction to that toxic person anymore. And you're able to start moving forward with your healing, with your growth, with your change. If you want to talk sometime, go to rawmotivations.com, click on the one-on-ones. Would love to interact with you there. Would love to have you there and love to have you join us with a bunch of other people that are excited about their growth mindset and healing journey. So check that out, narcapp.com, narcapp.com. So when we're talking about narcissists, we normally notice like they struggle with a lot of addictions, right? They have addictive personality. This is what brings them a lot of times into the stalking realm. It brings them into a lot of different addictions and stuff of where they're looking for getting high off of another person or another thing or whatever it might be, okay? There's oftentimes almost like an addiction model that almost matches up to some of narcissism of looking for supply, looking for people to control, manipulate so that they have that high, that have that elevated sense of ego and who they are and the entitlement of like, yeah, I did that, I got that, all that kind of stuff. So when we're talking about addictions, we've got, the typical ones: gambling, pornography, sex, drugs, alcohol, all these different types of addictions that come alongside, oftentimes with narcissism, that's normally used in a form of sedation. When we talk about addictions, a lot of addictions are brought into people's lives as a form of sedation to make them feel better about the circumstances that they're currently in. So you might be asking, what's wrong with a narcissist? Because they come across like everything's great, everything's the best. They go from person to person, they don't have all these feelings, all this stuff. Like they make it seem piece of cake. What could they actually be sedating from? The thing that they're sedating from is the truth. And the truth is what exposes what's underneath. And so as a result, they sedate to be able to hide and suppress feelings and discomfort and to be able to disconnect from the guilt and the shame of who they actually are. A lot of times they'll keep doing that time and time again to be able to run and get away from the person that they are inside because they're unwilling to be honest and actually approach the issues underneath the surface. So what about sex addiction? Okay, what does that actually look like? What does that actually mean when we talk about sex addiction? Okay, well, really quick, easiest way to say, hey, a sex addict, they're obsessed with sex. So it's not just the act of it, but it's the thought of it, it's the idea, it's the fantasy of it, it's all these different types of things. It's bringing in pornography, it's pleasuring themselves like multiple times. Like it's the idea of like, hey, this is something that has to be big that I'm always focused on. Now, this could be like excessive time planning, different sexual encounters, sexual things, like sexual activities, using sex services, like getting a lot of people involved in whatever their activity wants to be for the purpose of sedating, for the purpose of their pleasure. Okay, oftentimes it'll continue moving forward into reckless sexual activities, stuff that is dangerous, stuff that could hurt multiple people, stuff that could be transmuted to multiple people. Sex actions against society of like what it actually looks like, of how they're actually coming across other people, like how they're exposing themselves to other people. Like there's a lot of different things out there. But the thing is, they'll continue to move forward in a lot of sexual behavior no matter what the consequences because they don't care. There's an aspect that when someone becomes an addict, they get addicted to that feeling, and as a result, it just keeps going and ramps up more and more and more, oftentimes looking for that first high, looking for that hit, and not able to get it, so it becomes more dangerous, more crazy as it moves forward, regardless of the thought, this might actually hurt other people, or this might actually affect me, or this might put me in jail, like those kind of thoughts. It just continues moving forward without consequences. A lot of times you'll see that person being addicted to the feelings, addicted to let's continue to go through the same motions to get the same result. Maybe it'll change. And they'll get addicted to different feelings that'll pop up that addicts will struggle with, of guilt, of shame, of remorse, of hopelessness, powerlessness, depressed, lonely, fearful, anxious, suicidal. A lot of times addicts will struggle with those different types of feelings, those different types of emotions. I don't know if you've heard some of my story, but being with my partner, being with my wife, I then had an affair with 5 different people. Over a period of like 7 years, went through a period of time where I was with one person, was with another person, back and forth, 5 different affairs, and got to the place where I thought I might just be cursed. Maybe this is something that's just going to happen time and time again, and I can't get away from it. It's just going to happen. So I got to a place in my life, in my work, all this kind of stuff, where my boss and my wife got together. They sent me to a sex addict intensive. Okay, it was like 12 hours a day. It was like working through stuff. Like I had to go through and write like a trauma egg, and like had to talk about like the shame cycle of how it goes up and down, feel bad, have to get it high, go back over, feel bad, like all this kind of stuff. Had to understand about like the chemicals going on, like the hormones, etc. And I ended up getting away from that intensive. And there's a part of me that was like frustrated and relieved at the same time. There's part of it because I was frustrated of like, well, I can't blame this on sex addiction because that's not what I'm struggling with. I'm actually struggling with narcissism. And there's also a piece that was actually slightly relieved that I was struggling with narcissism because then I finally had a defined answer of this is what I'm struggling with. Then I got into therapy, then I got diagnosed, all that kind of stuff. But like in my mind, I was avoiding that at all costs. Like I don't want to actually own up and say like, this is what I'm actually struggling with. I'd rather it be anything else. And a lot of times you'll have narcissists that will do that will rather say I'm a sex addict versus I'm a narcissist. Because a sex addict, then they'll come across and be like, well, this is just the addiction I have. So you need to pleasure me. You need to give me what I want. And you need to do it this way, whatever it might be. Like they'll use that to be able to coerce other people into giving them what they want And as a result, they're trying to justify their narcissistic abuse to another person by saying, well, this is what I am, so you just have to do it. The thing is, addiction never should justify abuse, no matter what it is. Maybe you're listening today and you've come out of an abusive household, or you've come out of a household that had addiction, and it feels like they always justified it. Well, I'm angry because I'm drunk, or I'm angry because of this. It should never justify it. You see, a lot of times people use the phrase, hurt people hurt people. I don't think that's right. At the end of the day, unhealed people hurt people. Because there's a lot of people that have been hurt and abused that are no longer hurting other people. But there's a lot of people that are unhealed that are still trying to dump their trauma onto other people or attack other people instead of working on themselves and growing, healing, and changing. When we talk about addictions, we need to understand that addiction is one thing, abuse is another thing, and you shouldn't have to deal with either one in a relationship. But there is a difference when people are saying, hey, I don't know if it's a narcissist, I don't know if it's because they're addicted, I don't know what's going on. Well, clear up the addiction and then see what actually happens. Because then that person needs to acknowledge, hey, this is who I am. This is what I need to do to get clean, to get fixed, to work on myself. Some narcissists out there are sex addicts. I'm not going to say that they're all not sex addicts. There's a lot of narcissists out there that are. And the ones that are, a lot of times they try to even ramp that up and use it more as an excuse. This is who I am, so you're just going to have to deal with it. Okay? The main focus is if you're struggling with the idea of, hey, is this person narcissistic or are they a sex addict? Get them into help or work with them to be like, hey, this is what you need to work on. They work on their sex addiction or whatever it might be. They work on that. And if they get better from that, then you can start seeing like how do they actually match up with narcissism. The thing you have to understand is if you're in any type of relationship, sex addiction, narcissistic relationship, whatever it might be, work on yourself, heal yourself. It's not your job to fix another person. It's not your job to make the relationship better by fixing that other person. All you can work on and control is you. And the last thing I want to do is say anything on here that makes you stay in a relationship that keeps you a little bit longer. But I did want to bring this up of what it actually looks like and sometimes how people actually excuse it or say like, hey, this is okay, when in reality it's not. The biggest thing is addiction should never justify abuse. If you're in a relationship that is abusing you, I want you to understand you're not alone. There's a lot of people struggling with the same thought process. You're not crazy. You need to get out. You need to make sure that you're safe. You're not hopeless. There's lots of people that you can reach out to for help. And so please do that. Make sure you're safe in dealing with anybody that's narcissistic, if anybody that's a sex addict, anything like that. Just please be sure that you are being safe because addiction should never justify abuse. Have you noticed a sudden shift in your narcissistic partner's intimacy level? Yeah. We're going to be jumping into narcissists no longer being intimate and what are the possibilities of it being cheating, of it being pornography. What does it actually look like on a day-to-day basis? How does it actually change things in your relationship? Maybe there's some things even in this video you can highlight and be like, oh, maybe this is happening. Okay, maybe you're wondering if their actions could be attributed to external factors, maybe cheating, maybe porn, and we're going to dive into that. Okay, so join me as we dive into the complex world of narcissistic behavior and the connection to diminishing intimacy in the relationship. How it shows up, how it affects, how it controls, all different pieces like that. If you guys are new here, my name is Ben Taylor. I'm a self-aware narcissist on this channel to provide awareness about narcissistic abuse. I'm the founder of Raw Motivations and your guide in the 7-day challenge that you can access at escapetoxicity.com. 7 days for $7 to help you just understand more about narcissistic abuse. Like, are you the narcissist? What is narcissism? Like, how do I deal with the guilt and the shame? How do I actually work through like the trauma bond? We start laying out the groundwork for you to understand how to be able to move forward. So if you watch any of my videos and you're like, I don't know about this guy. He's a narcissist, but he's trying to help people. Check out the 7-day challenge. It's $7. You can see how we teach. And if it resonates with you, then you can graduate from that. You can move into the clarity challenge. Anyways, so talking through this aspect of narcissists that slowly pull away from intimacy and they slowly pull away of actually being connected with you. Now, this doesn't typically happen just randomly. It typically has a cause and effect. typically has this first aspect of pulling away emotionally and then oftentimes physically as well. It could be reversed, but that's typically the order that happens. So narcissists typically have self-centered nature, right? Like it's all about me, myself, and I. Like it has to be about me, not anybody else, all that kind of stuff. But this extends into intimacy. This extends into your connection. This extends into your emotion, extends into your sexual relationship. And as the initial pieces fade, the love bombing, the charm, the infatuation, as it starts to fade, oftentimes they're less and less interested in you as a whole. Now, they're less interested in you emotionally, maybe less interested in you sexually, maybe less interested just in building any type of connection. See, sometimes what happens with the narcissist is they build a connection up to a certain level and then that's it. Like capped out, maxed out, because the next level would require another level of honesty. That level of honesty is too exposing, is too vulnerable, and the narcissist is like, I don't want to do this. You see this oftentimes in a narcissistic relationship that woos you and gets with you and does this amazing job of connecting with you up until marriage or engagement or a pivotal moment. And then it switches. Then it changes. Then it gets to the place where it flips and it starts to disappear. It starts to become different. It starts to slowly devalue and change. Sometimes it's like a light bulb where it completely changes really rapidly. This happens a lot of times for narcissists. They're infatuated with the chase. Let me get with this person. Let me be with this person. I want to trap them in the relationship. And then they get you and they don't know what to do with you. Like they're lost in the aspect of like, I built all of this on a shifting foundation, on a bunch of falsehoods, on a bunch of stuff I made up just to get them in the relationship. Now what do? And typically they don't know. So they'll typically try to find, maybe if I just do it again, maybe if I build this with someone else, maybe if I find someone on the side, all these different things to be able to keep that facade going and to find another outlet of them trying to find this intimacy that they're not really being intimate because they're not really being honest. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, leave a comment. Okay, but when we're talking about this piece of the initial charm fades, they become less interested, like they're only going to focus more on them. So the love bombing phase, then we move from idealization into devaluation, and then it becomes solely about them. Not that it wasn't to start off with, but now you see it more and more and more. So you get to the place where you start to realize he's been pulling away for a bit of time. Like he's become more distant, he's become more uninterested in you. In emotionally, sexually, preferring to spend time in whatever else. It might be his own interests, might be hobbies, might be other people. You oftentimes have no clue. It's just like, why am I not attractive anymore? Why is he not coming towards me? Why does he not care about me? Why does he not love me? What does he not find me? Like all these thoughts sort of going through your head. So one of the aspects that is typical in toxic relationships is pornography. Okay, pornography for a lot of narcissists has this allure of like, this can help fix me or fill me up or give me the high that I want in the moment. Now, the thing is, they'll get with someone, they'll love them to a certain degree. They'll be like, oh, this is amazing, love bombing, all these things. And then it's like, it's still not doing everything that I want, but I've got this other outlet. I've got pornography. Let me look at that. Now, there's not a lot of couples that pornography infiltrates into the couple's life and it's a healthy relationship, especially if it's being a secret on one side or the other. So oftentimes this allure will help the narcissist be like, oh, if I do this, it'll complete the lack of intimacy that I'm getting from this person. But it becomes a constant need. Oftentimes it becomes an obsession or even an addiction. Sometimes an addiction that the narcissist hides under. Well, I'm a sex addict, so you might as well give me sex. But the constant need of validation and novelty drives them towards seeking pleasures outside of the relationship. Let me keep doing stuff that's going to get me certain pleasure, certain joy, and it leads to a decline in emotional and physical intimacy in the relationship. Because it's hard, because he's comparing other women's bodies to yours. Like he's comparing sexual encounters that he's seeing online that are oftentimes fake and phony, but he's seeing all these things online to you. You're not going to compare to some of those things. Why? Because he hasn't even created a safe place for you to even show up in a way that would be attractive to you and to him in a safe environment. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay?
A narcissist will make you feel unsafe in the things that he wants you to do, often because he's already experiencing and doing all those things on the side in the aspect of pornography. Well, I saw this, so let me try this. And you're like, whoa, this doesn't feel good. This isn't what I want. He doesn't care. He just wants to recreate what he's already in his mind. He's not even thinking about you. He's thinking about that particular feeling or idea or thought that came from the porn. But all it does is it starts to break apart the relationship. It starts to lead to this disconnection. And so you start to realize, like, hey, I think he's been obsessed with pornography. Maybe you found out about it. Maybe you stumbled upon it and realized that it's a problem and it's been causing this huge reduction in physical intimacy. And overall, just destroying your emotional connection. Now, pornography a lot of times is the stepping stone to cheating. Some narcissists are like, yeah, no, I'd never cheat. But they look at pornography. Some people classify that as cheating, not cheating, whatever. It's not going to help the relationship typically. Okay, but then oftentimes that mental and emotional like idea of like, oh, let me look at this, only serves for a short period of time. Then it has to up the ante. Then it has to look better. And it has to feel better. Then the narcissist has to get with that person, not necessarily that person, but a person. So then narcissist starts to seek validation from other places. Of like, this excitement only got me so far. Now I need to find more of it. Now I need to connect with more people. Now I can actually pay someone to have sex with me. Now I can actually connect with someone who's at work and then have sex with them. Like all these different things come up and you start to see cheating come into the relationship. Okay? Infidelity finds a way to help them keep satisfied for their constant need of attention, admiration, control, disregarding typically any impact it has on your well-being. You see, when a narcissist is cheating, they don't care about you and they don't think about you because you're out of sight, out of mind. It's like, well, if I keep this quiet, she won't know about it. Therefore, she won't get upset. Therefore, she won't feel bad. Therefore, it won't make me feel bad. So why should I even do that? Because it's going to affect me. And so he's just going to keep doing it over and over and over again because it's like, hey, this feels good. This is great. I can control this person. I can keep it under wraps because they don't want to be exposed because they're in a relationship. All this kind of stuff happens. Okay, but oftentimes it just continues to move forward. And some of it might be like, you're like, something's different. I don't know what. And this is the part that's hard because you might have a gut feeling that something's different, but you're like, I don't have any proof. One thing that's interesting is you'll see a difference in the intimacy oftentimes when your partner is cheating. When they're looking at porn too, but when the partner is cheating in particular. You'll see nuances that'll be different. He'll start to kiss you different. He'll start to react different. He'll start to connect or make moves different. And you're like, this is new. It's never been this way, but it feels like old hat for him. That's because he's been doing this with someone else. And so it's like, this feels natural for him. And sometimes in the mind, it's not even about the person, it's about the pleasure. So he's trying to do something in that moment, not even realizing or thinking, oh, this is the wrong person. I'll do this with this person. But he's like, oh, this felt good with this person. Let me do it in this person. Sometimes it ramps up the sexual connection with you and your spouse when he's cheating on you. Like, how does that even make sense? Sometimes it's almost like if they have this connection with the other person, then they start having a different type of connection with you. It's like both people kind of even them out a little bit. Not saying it's like less abusive, but for a period of time, like if the cheating relationship is good, sometimes that makes the relationship seem to function slightly better. There seems to be more of a connection because they're mimicking the things that are happening in the other relationship. Like they're modeling the same almost like love bombing type piece to the other person, sometimes in bed with you. And so it provides this like unique thing of like, wait a second, like this actually has been better than what it is, but he's still abusive. Or like we're connected differently or we're connected more. And it makes this very confusing environment. I feel like I'm confusing myself as I'm trying to say it. But like the whole aspect I'm trying to have you understand is oftentimes when there's this aspect of losing intimacy, it typically for a guy leads back to pornography and cheating. There might be other things, but as a whole. I'm not going to say all, but it's easier if I say all and everybody believes it than it is to just say 99% of the time and then you hold on to that 1%. Mine isn't a cheater, and then you find out 5 years later he's been cheating on you the whole time. Okay, so just understand that a lot of times when there's this lack of intimacy, a lot of times it's an outlet someplace else. Pornography and cheating are probably the most popular ones. Hopefully that makes sense. If this doesn't make sense, leave a comment down below, leave a question, and we'll follow it up with another video or something else that can help you understand more about the topic and more about the nuances of being with a toxic person. If I can help in any way, you can reach out for help. Go to rawmotivations.com, click on the one-on-ones. I'd love to talk to you there. I've cried every year on my birthday for the last 6 years. I've literally kept count. Brittany, it's time to get you free. Like, that's something that we want to be able to help break you from the trigger so you don't have to constantly go back to that spot every time. How do I keep him from triangulating me? He's done it twice with different new supply each time. I feel like I need a little bit more information with that, because triangulation only works when you participate. So like, if he's bringing you in and talking to you about another person, like, you need to be able to say like we're going to close the loop on this. And also, like, we need to define some of the piece of triangulating, because sometimes people have different aspects of that. So like, triangulation a lot of times is when the narcissist is the go-between and is talking like to you about another person, to the other person about you, pitting you guys against each other. And typically, if you can actually break that barrier and talk to that person, you can see stuff that's actually happening. But if you already know it's supply, like, I don't know. I need to understand a little bit more that way. Do you know if NPD or ASPD is genetic? My biological father and brother had this. Not necessarily genetic, but you might be more predisposed to struggle with it. Typically, when you get brought up in a narcissistic household, you'll either turn out to be a narcissist, or you'll turn out to be a codependent and be with a narcissist. Like, you'll see that happen a lot of times. Going through divorce after 36 years, cannot wait for him to be out of his life. I'm glad you're going through that, like getting free. Not that you have to go through it, but I'm glad you're getting free. Even after 36 years, you can heal. We've got a lot of clients that have been in marriages for a long period of time that they're finding healing. Okay. Triangulation could be with a dog, work with it 100%. Are bipolar narcissists more dangerous? Narcissism is dangerous as a whole. Like, you add that on top and they might be more dangerous, but like, narcissism is dangerous enough as it is. Cheat on me during my pregnancy, got that woman pregnant, has cheated on her the whole time. Narcissist oftentimes is going to cheat. I'm going to cheat you out of your house, your home, your time, your money, your energy, your spirituality, your sexuality. Like, they're going to cheat. And so typically people are like, why narcissist isn't a cheater? They're all cheaters. It just depends on how they're actually leveraging that and using that. Like, they might be cheating on you physically, emotionally, sexually, financially. Like, there's all different aspects of how they're actually ruining your life. And so it's like, are you going to make a choice to be free? Are you going to make a choice to stand up for you? You might not be able to do that by confronting him. You might be able to do that by you actually finding your freedom, your voice, your confidence, your self-esteem back. If you want to know how to do that, you can click on the link in the bio, escapetoxicity.com, to be able to start moving forward. Many narcissists have ADHD, don't they? Some. Like, I'm not sure I could go through and say all of them do. Sometimes you have ADHD that get misdiagnosed, vice versa, of like a narcissist that they say has ADHD when actually it's just narcissism. Okay. Why after narcissistic abuse, I don't even enjoy sex with others anymore? Probably because of the trauma or the triggers that go back to what brought you into that place to start off with. I tried to tell her, but she doesn't believe me. He lost his job, now lives off of her. And a lot of times you can't warn the new supply. They won't even listen. Is staying at work with my ex-narcissist going to end horribly? Probably. I would say that typically that will happen that way. So be really careful. He escalated the abuse so bad, I finally filed for divorce. Then he wanted therapy. Confusing. It's not confusing from this side. That's normal. I know that's not right, and I know that's not good, but it's actually normal. A narcissist will flip the script. If you look up, I have a YouTube video that goes more in depth, but narcissist at the end of the relationship, I think that's the title of the video. And what you'll see is at the end of the relationship, the narcissist will magically change. He'll magically figure it out. He'll magically start doing all the things that you wanted him to do, not because he had an epiphany, but because he realizes that his manipulation tactics of you no longer work. So he has to change what he's actually doing. Okay. Trying so hard to allow a relationship with our kids, but he is a mess. Told me last night he just isn't going to give me a divorce. I already put the freedom date on the calendar. Yeah, so like, don't too many people focus on like, I have to give my kids a relationship with their dad. And if their dad's toxic, why? Because this whole like keep them under one roof, like make sure they actually have a dad, like that doesn't help them if he's toxic. And it also shows them a lot of times that, hey, mom doesn't care enough about herself to stand up. So I'm glad that you have a freedom date. I'm not putting you down at all. I'm just saying, hey, like doesn't deserve a relationship if he's being toxic. Okay. Is there any benefit to let him know that his stories are inconsistent and call him out for lying? I think it's always great to call everybody out for lying. The thing is, if the narcissist is unwilling to actually acknowledge that and actually like start working on his lies, then you need to run. Like, you need to get out of the relationship, because otherwise, like, you're just going to be stuck in a toxic relationship. And if you don't have any truth as like the baseline, like, nothing's ever going to change. How do I protect my 10-year-old from his manipulation? Part of it would be educating your 10-year-old, not saying, hey, this is what this person does, but making sure he's able to express himself emotionally, working through how does he actually determine how life works, integrity, honesty, all those things. At the end of the day, if you're in a toxic relationship and you have a kid and you're like, I want to protect my kid, I want to help my kid, the biggest way is for you to get healing. Out of your healing comes the redemption of your children. The hard part is so many people focus on their kids first, they don't actually get healed. And so it's like you're trying to pour into your kids out of an empty glass, and you're wondering, like, why is all the stuff I'm doing not working? Sometimes it's because you're setting the example of still getting triggered, still dealing with the abuse, still like struggling and being scared of the stuff that's happening, and you haven't actually healed or been free from it. So understand that that's a big piece in your kids. That's how you're actually helping you. Okay. My narcissistic friends started following me on Instagram. What can that mean? It can mean that they started following on Instagram. I'm not going to read into it a ton. If they're toxic and they're following you and you don't want them following you, block them, ghost, go no contact, put your profile to private. Like, at the end of the day, like, don't stress about what he's doing. Focus on what you're doing, because if you're not doing anything towards your healing, like, you're still staying stagnant, and narcissist is just going to get closer and closer. Financial, emotional, verbal, now physical. 12 days after total hip replacement, he pushed me walking with a walker. So just understand that it's typically going to keep getting worse, and like, that has to change. Like, I did a live the other day about talking through a person that contacted me, narcissistic abuse. They lived in North Carolina, and he killed his 11-year-old son. And then he also murdered him, like, committed suicide for himself, and then he burned the house down. Okay. The other 11-year-old daughter barely got out alive. Like, this stuff is real. So all of you are like, hey, he's only hit me like once. Like, that's enough to leave. Okay. If the person in your life has already been doing physical domestic violence, like, you need to leave. You need to get out. You need to get safe. If he's already strangled you, you're 750 times more likely that he's going to murder you. So you need to understand this shit is real, and you'll need to be able to get out. Okay. Now, if you're struggling with that mentally and emotionally, like, I don't think I can, click on the link in the bio, because that's how we actually help people change their mindset, rewire what they're thinking, so they have the confidence to actually leave and move forward in their healing. If they flip the script, how did you change? Like, if the narcissist flipped the script, so narcissist is always going to flip the script. If they're not willing to be honest, no change is possible. Part of it came down to me learning how to be honest with myself more than anything else. Like, honesty with the self is like the first aspect. How to show your child after he has brainwashed her for years. It's going to be you consistently showing up healthy, and you consistently like investing positivity into that person. You have to sometimes wait for them to come around. They're not always going to come around. It might take a while. Like, it's really difficult, but there's not a ton that you can do. You can't force the other person to see it. You can't force the other person to change.